The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and dreamed of what lay beyond. In the year 2847, those dreams had become reality. Humans had spread across dozens of worlds, built cities on distant planets, and finally taken their place among the stars. But humanity was young, so very young. The Galactic Council had existed for over 15,000 years. 4,000 different species lived together under one law, one agreement called the Covenant of Eternal Peace. These ancient civilizations had built wonders that humans could barely understand. They had stopped wars, ended famines, and created a society that stretched across millions of star systems. When humans arrived, the Council welcomed them with polite smiles and careful words. But behind closed doors, many species whispered their true thoughts. Humans were primitive, emotional, dangerous. They were children playing with toys they did not understand. Admiral Park Do-hyun stood on the bridge of his ship, the UNSF Horizon. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. At 62 years old, he had served humanity for 4 decades. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The message came at 03:00 hours, when most of the crew was sleeping. The communication officer, a young woman named Yuna, read it 3 times before she believed it. Her hand shook as she sent it to the Admiral's personal screen. Park Do-hyun read the words slowly. Then he read them again. His face, usually calm as stone, turned white. "Get me a secure line to Earth," he said. His voice was quiet, but everyone on the bridge heard the anger beneath it. Now, 12,000 children. Gone. The Valorians had taken them. The Valorians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Their bodies were made of living crystal that sparkled like diamonds. They had existed for over 100,000 years and considered themselves the most advanced civilization in existence. They looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. For years, the Valorians had complained about humanity. They said humans were too aggressive, too emotional, too unpredictable. They said human children were being raised wrong, taught to fight and compete instead of living in peace and harmony. And now, using something called Resolution 7749, they had taken matters into their own hands. The resolution claimed that humans were unfit to raise their own young. It said that human children needed to be re-educated by more advanced species. It said this was for humanity's own good. Lieutenant Han Jian stood beside the Admiral, her face pale. She was 30 years old, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had joined the military to protect her family. Now she learned that her 8-year-old nephew, Han Min-jun, had been among those taken. "They came at night," she whispered, reading the reports from the colony worlds. The children were sleeping. Their parents never even knew until morning. The Valorians had used technology that humans could not detect. They had walked through walls like ghosts. They had lifted sleeping children from their beds and carried them away to ships waiting in orbit. By the time anyone realized what had happened, they were gone. On Earth, billions of people watched the news in horror. Parents held their children tight. Grandparents wept. Young people who had never known war felt something ancient and terrible wake up inside them. President Yoon Tae-woo called an emergency meeting of the United Nations of Seoul. He was a calm man, known for his patience and wisdom. He had spent 20 years building bridges between humanity and the Council, always believing that peace was possible. Now he stood before the assembled leaders of humanity, and his eyes were cold as winter. "I have spoken with the Galactic Council," he said. His voice did not shake, but those who knew him could hear the fury he was holding back. "They've offered us an apology. They have offered us compensation in the form of credits and trade agreements." He paused, letting the words sink in. They believe this is enough. They believe we will accept their apology, take their money, and move on. His hands gripped the podium until his knuckles turned white. They do not understand us at all. In homes across Earth and every human colony, people gathered around screens to watch their president speak. Grandmother Choi Misuk, an old woman of 93 years, sat in her small apartment in New Seoul. She had survived wars and famines. She had watched humanity reach the stars. Now she watched with hard eyes as her president spoke the words she had been waiting to hear. "We do not want war," President Yoon continued. "We have never wanted war. We joined this council because we believed in peace. We followed their rules. We respected their traditions. We did everything they asked of us." His voice grew harder. "But there are some things that cannot be forgiven. There are some lines that cannot be crossed. They have taken our children. They have stolen them from their beds, from their homes, from their families. They say this is for our own good." He shook his head slowly. "We will not negotiate. We will not accept compensation. We will not discuss this matter in their courts or their councils. We will give them one chance, and only one, to return our children safely. If they refuse..." President Yoon looked directly into the camera. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched a species they had dismissed as primitive and young. If they refuse, they will learn why humanity has survived every challenge, every disaster, every enemy we have ever faced. They will learn what happens when you threaten what we love. They will learn that 15,000 years of peace means nothing to us if our children are not safe. On the Valorian homeworld, the crystal beings watched the broadcast with amusement. The human president was making threats? How adorable. What could one young species do against civilizations that had existed before humans learned to make fire? They sent a polite response. They explained that the children were being well cared for. They explained that the re-education would take approximately 50 years. They explained that humanity should be grateful for this opportunity to improve. They did not return the children. Admiral Park Do-hyun received the response on his ship. He read it carefully. Then he opened a secure channel to a facility that officially did not exist. "Begin activation," he said. "All assets. All locations. Humanity is going to war." On the dark side of Earth's moon, lights began to turn on in places that had been silent for 200 years. Massive doors opened. Engines that had never been tested began to roar. The galaxy thought they knew humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Part 2. The awakening deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon. Dr. Shin Yoonji walked through corridors that had not seen light in decades. She was 54 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. For 30 years, she had led Project Black Horizon, humanity's greatest secret. Now that secret was about to be revealed. "Power systems online," reported her assistant, a young man named Keo Seung-ho. He was nervous. Everyone was nervous. "All facilities are responding. Luna Base, Mars Deep, the Saturn Rings, the hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt. Everything is waking up." Dr. Shin nodded slowly. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment, hoping it would never come. But she had always known it might. When humanity first joined the Galactic Council, they had been amazed by what they found. Species with technology thousands of years more advanced than anything on Earth. Ships that could cross the galaxy in days. Weapons that could destroy planets. Medicine that could cure any disease. The Council had shared some of this technology with humanity, but not all. They gave humans enough to be useful, but not enough to be dangerous. They treated humans like children, giving them simple toys while keeping the real treasures locked away. But humans were curious. Humans were clever. And humans never stopped watching and learning. They felt we were stupid, Dr. Shin said quietly, looking at the rows of warships being prepared for launch. They felt we were just happy to receive their scraps. They never asked why we advanced so fast. They assumed we were simply lucky. The truth was different. Every piece of technology the Council shared, humanity studied and improved. Every species they met, humanity learned from. Engineers took apart alien machines and rebuilt them better. Scientists studied alien biology and found weaknesses. Military planners watched alien tactics and developed counters. And all of it, every discovery and every invention, was hidden away in facilities like this one. The galaxy believed humanity had about 200 warships. Simple vessels with basic weapons, barely capable of defending their own colonies. The reality was 12,000 warships. Each one was equipped with technology stolen, copied, and improved from every species humanity had ever encountered. Each one was crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for a war everyone hoped would never come. On Earth, Commander Beek Suman received a message that changed everything. She was the head of Black Operations, a division so secret that even most military leaders did not know it existed. For 30 years, she had been placing agents throughout the galaxy. They worked as traders, diplomats, scientists, and servants. They watched. They listened. They waited. Now they had found the children. The facility is on the Valorian homeworld. Commander Beek reported to Admiral Park via secure channel. Underground, about 3 kilometers beneath their capital city. They have the children in separate rooms, 1 child per room. The Valorians are already beginning their re-education process. Admiral Park's jaw tightened. What kind of process? Commander Beek hesitated. They are using machines to change the children's thoughts. They believe human emotions are a disease that must be cured. They are trying to make the children think and feel like Valorians. For a long moment, Admiral Park said nothing. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. How long until we can reach them? If we launch now, 1 week. But sir, the Valorian homeworld is considered impossible to attack. Their defenses are 10,000 years more advanced than ours. Their fleet outnumbers us 50 to 1. The Council will send reinforcements. We will be fighting the entire galaxy. Admiral Park turned to look out the window of his ship. Stars filled the darkness. Millions of tiny lights that humanity had once only dreamed of reaching. Commander, he said, I have served in the military for 40 years. I have followed orders, kept secrets, and done things I am not proud of. I have always believed that patience and diplomacy were the answer. I have always counseled peace. He turned back to face the screen. But those are our children. If we do not get them back, if we let this stand, then we are not worthy of the stars. We are not worthy of anything. Prepare the fleet. We launch in 6 hours. Across human space, the call went out. Not through official channels, but through something older and deeper. Families told families. Friends told friends. The word spread like fire through dry grass. They took our children. We are going to get them back. On the colony world of New Bizen, a retired general named An Dongwook heard the news and immediately contacted his old unit. He was 78 years old, with bad knees and worse hearing. He had not worn a uniform in 20 years. I can still shoot, he told the recruitment officer. I can still fight. Those are our children. On a space station orbiting Jupiter, a young engineer named Yu Nari made a decision. She had never held a weapon in her life. She had spent her career building things, not destroying them. But she had a little sister on one of the attacked colonies. That sister had a daughter, a bright 6-year-old named Somi who loved to dance. Somi was one of the taken. Tell me where to go, Yunari said to the military recruiter. Tell me what to do. I will learn. I will fight. I will do whatever it takes. Across every human world, the story was the same. Young and old, rich and poor, soldiers and civilians. They came forward by the millions, offering everything they had. The Valorians watched these developments with confusion. Why were the humans so upset? The children would be returned eventually, once they had been properly educated. It would only take 50 years or so. Surely the humans could simply have more children in the meantime. They did not understand. They could not understand that to the ancient species of the galaxy, children were simply future adults. They were investments, projects, things to be shaped and molded. If one generation was lost, another would come along. But to humans, children were something different. They were hope. They were love. They were the reason for everything. Every human who had ever lived had once been a child, held in someone's arms, loved beyond all reason. You could take territory from humans. You could destroy their cities. You could break their governments and shatter their economies. They would survive. They would rebuild. They would adapt, but take their children? Dr. Shin stood in the command center of Luna Base and watched the fleet prepare to launch. 12,000 ships, each one carrying humans who were ready to die for children they had never met. They have no idea what they have done, she said softly. They have awakened something old and terrible. Something that cannot be reasoned with or bargained with. Something that will not stop, will not rest, will not hesitate. She watched the first ships begin to move toward open space. They have awakened the rage of parents. God help them all. Part 3. The Breaking the Human Fleet arrived in Valorian space on a Tuesday morning, local time. The crystal beings had been expecting them. They had assembled the largest defense force in their history. Over 600,000 warships arranged in perfect formations around their homeworld. Ancient weapons platforms, some older than human civilization itself, powered up and aimed at the approaching enemy. The Valorian High Commander, a being of pure blue crystal named Torvax, watched the human fleet with something like pity. There were only 8,000 human ships. Against his forces, they would last perhaps an hour. Open a channel, Torvax commanded. Give them one last chance to surrender. The message was simple. Turn back now, and the Council would show mercy. Continue forward, and humanity would be destroyed. Admiral Park Do-hyun received the message on the bridge of the horizon. Lieutenant Han Ji-en stood beside him, her face hard as steel. Somewhere on the planet below, her nephew was being tortured, his mind being twisted by machines that wanted to make him something other than human. "Sir?" asked the communications officer. "What should I tell them?" Admiral Park smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Tell them we are not here to talk." The Battle of Valorian Prime began at 0847 hours. Captain Gong Hyun-woo led the first wave of attack ships. He was 42 years old, a veteran of a dozen small conflicts that the Council had never considered important. He had trained his whole life for this moment. The Valorians expected a traditional battle. In Council space, wars followed rules. Fleets would face each other. Commanders would talk. Eventually, one side would realize they were losing and surrender with dignity. It was civilized. It was proper. Humans did not fight like that. Captain Gong split his force into 47 separate groups, each one attacking from a different direction at the same time. While the Valorians tried to figure out which was the main attack, the humans hit them everywhere at once. "They can't track us," reported Lieutenant Moon Hyung from her fighter. She was weaving between enemy ships, firing at weak points that human intelligence had identified decades ago. Their systems are designed for organized warfare. They don't know how to handle chaos. The Valorians were stronger. Their ships were more advanced. Their weapons were more powerful. But humans fought dirty. Small ships loaded with explosives crashed into Valorian command vessels. Hackers worked to shut down enemy communication networks. Electronic warfare specialists filled the Valorian sensors with false images, making them see threats that did not exist and miss threats that did not. And then there were the new weapons. The Council had strict rules about military technology. Certain weapons were forbidden because they were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too horrible. For 15,000 years, no species had dared to break these rules. Humanity had spent 200 years building weapons that the Council had never imagined. Gravitational singularity bombs that created tiny black holes, swallowing entire squadrons in seconds. Dimensional phasing technology that let human ships appear and disappear at will. AI-driven drone swarms that learned from every battle, adapting and improving faster than organic minds could follow. Commander Torvax watched his perfect formation fall apart. Ships that had served the Valorian Collective for thousands of years were being destroyed by creatures that had only discovered fire a few moments ago. By galactic standards, how is this possible? He demanded. They are primitives. They are children. His tactical officer, a younger crystal being named Syrinx, studied the data with growing horror. Sir, their technology. It is not human. I am detecting signatures from Valorian systems, from karate systems, from species that went extinct before humans evolved. They have been collecting technology from every civilization they have encountered. They have been combining it, improving it. Syrinx looked up at his commander with something that might have been fear. Sir, they have been preparing for this. For centuries. They knew this day would come. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Valorian defense fleet had lost over 400,000 ships. The humans had lost 2,000. The ratio was impossible. It should not have happened. And yet it did. While the space battle raged above, Special Forces Commander No Jung-kook led the ground assault. His team of 500 soldiers had one mission: reach the children and bring them home. They dropped from orbit in pods designed to avoid detection. They landed 3 kilometers from the facility and began moving through underground tunnels that human agents had mapped years ago. The Valorians had guards, but they were not prepared for human soldiers. The crystal beings had not fought a ground war in millennia. They relied on technology, on shields, and automated defenses. Commander No's soldiers moved like ghosts. They used electromagnetic pulses to disable the automated systems. They used special weapons designed to shatter crystal bodies. They moved room by room, level by level, getting closer to the children with every step. Sergeant Moonhyung was the first to reach the holding area. She had landed her damaged fighter and joined the ground team. Unable to wait in orbit while children were suffering below, the door opened. And she saw them. 12,000 children, each one in a separate small room. They were awake, their eyes blank, machines attached to their heads. The re-education process had begun. Sergeant Moon felt something break inside her. These were human children. They had been playing and laughing just weeks ago. Now they sat like dolls, their minds being slowly erased. "Get the medics in here," she ordered, her voice cracking. "We need to disconnect them carefully. We need to get them home." One by one, the children were freed. One by one, they began to wake up, confused and frightened but alive. Sergeant Moon found herself kneeling beside a small boy who was crying for his mother. "It is okay," she whispered, holding him close. "You are safe now. We are taking you home." Above the planet, Admiral Park received the news. All 12,000 children had been recovered. Casualties were minimal. The mission was a success, but the Admiral knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The Galactic Council would not let this stand. 4,000 species, united for 15,000 years, would demand justice. They would demand that humanity be punished for breaking the peace, for using forbidden weapons, for defying the ancient order of the galaxy. War was coming. Not a battle, but a true war. The kind that changed the shape of civilizations. Admiral Park looked at the burning remains of the Valorian fleet and thought about the children being carried to safety below. Whatever came next, whatever price humanity had to pay, it was worth it. Some things were more important than peace. Some things were worth fighting for. Part 4. The Reckoning. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 3 days after the Battle of Valorian Prime. Representatives from 4,000 species filled the Great Assembly Hall, a structure so large that it had its own weather system. For 15,000 years, this hall had been a place of peace and diplomacy. Now it echoed with calls for war. The Valorian representative demanded justice. The humans had attacked without warning. They had used forbidden weapons. They had killed hundreds of thousands of Valorian warriors. They had stolen back the children who were being helped, being improved, being saved from their own primitive nature. One by one, other species rose to support the Valorians. The humans were dangerous. The humans were unpredictable. The humans had broken the covenant of eternal peace. If they were not punished, if they were allowed to get away with this, then no species in the galaxy would ever be safe again. The vote was almost unanimous. Only 23 species voted against military action. The rest, 3,977 civilizations, voted yes. The largest military force in galactic history would be assembled. Humanity would be taught a lesson they would never forget. On Earth, President Yoon Tai-woo watched the vote with calm eyes. He had expected this. Everyone had expected this. But expecting something and experiencing it were very different things. How many ships? He asked his military advisor. Current estimates are 2.4 million warships, the advisor replied, plus support vessels, troop transports, and logistics craft. Total enemy forces will exceed 5 million ships. President Yoon nodded slowly. And how many do we have? Including all reserves and new construction, approximately 15,000. The numbers were impossible. Even with superior tactics, even with advanced weapons, humanity could not hope to defeat such a force. The math simply did not work. But President Yoon had learned something during his years of dealing with alien civilizations. They thought in numbers and logic. They calculated odds and made decisions based on probability. Humans did not work that way. Prepare our defenses, he ordered. Every ship, every soldier, every civilian who can hold a weapon. We will not surrender. We will not retreat. We will make them pay for every inch of space they take. The 3-week war began when the Council fleet entered human territory. Admiral Park Da-hyun commanded the defense from the bridge of the horizon. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Kwon Dasam, tracked the enemy forces on a display that showed more red than anything else. First wave incoming, she reported. Approximately 500,000 ships. Launch fighters, Admiral Park ordered. All batteries, prepare to fire. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. The first battle was at the edge of human space, near a colony called New Gwangju. The colonists had been evacuated, but the defense forces remained. 300 human ships against 500,000. They lasted 6 hours. When the last human ship was destroyed, the Council forces had lost 12,000 vessels. The human defenders had fought until their ships were broken, then evacuated in escape pods and continued fighting with personal weapons. Some had crashed their damaged ships into enemy flagships rather than surrender. The Council commanders were shocked. This was not how wars were supposed to work. When you were clearly defeated, you surrendered. You negotiated. You accepted your loss and moved on. Humans did not surrender. The war spread across human space. Every planet, every station, every outpost became a battlefield. The Council had more ships, more soldiers, more resources. They won battle after battle, but every victory cost them dearly. On Mars, General An Min-hee commanded the planetary defense. She was only 31 years old, the youngest general in human history. She had been promoted because everyone above her had died in the first week of the war. The Council surrounded Mars with overwhelming force. They demanded surrender. They promised that the colonists would be treated fairly, relocated to re-education centers where they could learn to be proper galactic citizens. General An's response was broadcast across every human and alien frequency. This is General An Min-hee of the United Nations of Seoul. You have come to our world. With your ships and your threats, you have demanded that we surrender, that we give up our homes, our families, our freedom. She paused, looking at the camera with eyes that showed no fear. I have a different proposal. Turn your ships around. Go back to your perfect council and your ancient civilizations. Tell them that Mars is not for sale, not for rent, and not for taking. Tell them that every human on this planet would rather die free than live as slaves. She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had already made peace with death. We are human. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. If you want this planet, come and take it. We will be waiting. The Battle of Mars lasted 9 days. When it was over, the Council had lost over 200,000 ships. Mars was damaged but not conquered. General An Min-hee was still alive, still fighting, still refusing to give up. Similar stories played out across human space. On Earth, civilians formed militias. On space stations, engineers turned mining equipment into weapons. On colony ships, families voted to fight rather than flee. Professor Lee Ji-won was 67 years old. He had spent his life studying history, teaching young people about the wars of humanity's past. When the Council forces approached Earth, he joined the planetary defense militia. I have studied every war our species has ever fought, he told the young soldiers around him. Every invasion, every occupation, every attempt to destroy us. Do you know what they all have in common? The soldiers shook their heads. We won. Every single time. Not because we were stronger. Not because we were smarter. We won because we simply refused to lose. We won because we kept fighting when any reasonable species would have given up. He picked up his weapon, an old rifle that had belonged to his grandfather. The galaxy thinks we are defeated. They think it is only a matter of time before we surrender. They do not understand us. They cannot understand us. We are human. We never stop fighting. We never stop hoping. And we never, ever give up. The 3-week war continued. The Council pushed deeper into human space, paying a terrible price for every light year they gained. Their commanders grew frustrated. Their soldiers grew afraid. They had expected a quick victory. Instead, they found themselves facing something they had never encountered. A species that fought with no concern for survival, only for victory. And deep in Council space, the Valorians grew desperate. Their fleet had been destroyed. Their reputation had been shattered. If the war ended without a clear victory, they would be humiliated forever. So they made a decision that would change everything. They activated the World Breaker. It was an ancient weapon, built 8,000 years ago and forbidden ever since. A single shot could crack a planet's core, turning a living world into a dead rock. They would destroy Earth. They would end the human threat forever. The World Breaker began its journey toward the human homeworld. Part 5. The Silence. The World Breaker arrived in Earth's solar system at 0347 hours on the 22nd day of the war. It was the largest weapon ever built. A ship the size of a small moon with a single purpose: the complete destruction of planets. For 8,000 years, it had been locked away, forbidden by every law and treaty in the galaxy. The Valorians had kept it hidden, waiting for a day when they might need it. That day had come. Admiral Park Do-yeon saw the weapon appear on his tactical display and felt his heart stop. The horizon was damaged, running on backup power, surrounded by the wreckage of a battle that had cost thousands of lives. There was no way to intercept the world breaker in time. There was no weapon that could stop it. "All hands," he said quietly into the shipwide channel. "It has been an honor serving with you." Lieutenant Han Jian stood beside him. Her nephew was safe now, back on Earth with his parents. He had survived the Valorian facility. He had survived the re-education machines. Now he would die anyway, along with every other human on the planet. "Sir," she whispered, "there must be something we can do." Admiral Park shook his head slowly. "We have fought well, Lieutenant. We have done everything possible. Sometimes that is not enough." On Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky. They knew what was coming. Emergency broadcasts had warned them. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The world breaker would fire, and 8 billion humans would die. President Yoon Tae-woo stood in his office, looking out the window at the city he loved. He had done everything he could. He had led his people through 3 weeks of impossible war. He had given them hope when there was none. Now hope was over. "Sir," said his aide, a young woman named Oh Subin, "Dr. Shin is on the line. She says it is urgent." President Yoon frowned. Dr. Shin Yoonji had been running Project Black Horizon for 30 years. All of her secrets had been revealed during the war. All of her hidden weapons had been used. What could she possibly have left? He took the call. "Mr. President," Dr. Shin's voice said calmly, "do you remember what I told you when you first learned about Project Black Horizon? When you asked what would happen if we ever faced a threat we could not defeat?" President Yoon closed his eyes. He remembered. "You said you had prepared for that too." "I did. Project Last Light. We built it 20 years ago, before I even told you about Black Horizon. It was always our final backup plan. What does it do?" Dr. Shin paused. "Watch the sky, Mr. President, and have a little faith." The world breaker powered up its main weapon. Energy readings went off every scale in the galaxy. Council observers watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. This was it. The end of humanity. A harsh lesson, but necessary. The weapon fired. A beam of pure destruction, capable of shattering a planet's core, shot toward Earth at nearly the speed of light. There was no defense against it. There was no escape from it. In seconds, it would strike, and humanity would be nothing but a memory. The beam hit something. In space, surrounding Earth in a sphere that no one had ever detected. A network of satellites activated. They had been placed there over the course of a century, hidden in the dark spaces between planets, invisible to every known form of sensor. Each one contained technology that humanity had developed in secret, combining knowledge stolen from every species in the galaxy. The beam struck the barrier created by these satellites and stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, stopped. The most powerful weapon in galactic history hit a wall that should not exist and simply ceased. Admiral Park stared at his display in disbelief. Lieutenant Han was crying beside him, tears of shock and hope running down her face. "How?" she whispered. "How is this possible?" On Earth, President Yoon asked the same question. Dr. Shin's voice was tired but satisfied. "For 200 years, we have studied every species in this galaxy. We have learned their science, their technology, their secrets. We have combined knowledge that no single civilization ever possessed. The Council species are ancient, but they are also stubborn. They stopped innovating thousands of years ago. They never imagined that someone might take their technology and improve upon it." She paused. "They forgot the most important thing about humans, Mr. President. We learn. We adapt. We never stop preparing for the worst. And we never, ever give up. The human counterattack was swift and absolute. Ships that had been hiding in the asteroid belt emerged and surrounded the world breaker. The ancient weapon, designed to destroy planets, was not designed to defend itself against boarding parties. Human soldiers stormed its corridors and captured it within hours. The Valorian leadership, the beings who had ordered the abduction of human children, who had broken 15,000 years of peace, who had tried to destroy an entire species, were arrested and taken to Earth for trial. Across the galaxy, the Council fleet stopped advancing. They had seen the impossible. They had watched their ultimate weapon fail against creatures they had considered primitive and weak. For the first time in 15,000 years, the ancient civilizations of the galaxy felt something they had forgotten: fear. One by one, species began withdrawing from the war. First the smaller civilizations, then the larger ones. They made excuses, claimed they had never really supported the Valorians, suggested that perhaps humanity had been treated unfairly. Within a week, the war was over. Not because humanity had won every battle, not because they had destroyed the Council fleet. The war ended because the galaxy finally understood what they were dealing with. Humans were not primitives. Humans were not children. Humans were something far more dangerous. They were survivors. They were fighters. They were a species that refused to stay down, refused to accept defeat, refused to stop no matter the odds. The peace conference was held 3 months later. Ambassador Osubin represented humanity. She was the same young woman who had served as President Yoon's aide, promoted to her new position because she understood something that many humans had forgotten. War was not the goal. Peace was the goal. True peace, based on respect and understanding, not on the arrogance of ancient civilizations. She stood before the Galactic Assembly, the same hall where the Council had voted to destroy her species. "You feared us," she said, a voice carrying through the vast space. "And perhaps you were right to. We are not like you. We do not measure our worth in centuries of peace or millennia of tradition. We measure it in the lengths we will go to protect those we love." She looked at the representatives of species who had tried to destroy her people. "We did not want this war. We did not want to break your peace. But you took our children. You tried to steal their minds, their identities, their humanity. You thought you were helping us. You thought you knew better." Her eyes hardened. "You were wrong." She let the silence stretch for a long moment. "We offer you a new covenant. Not peace through fear, but peace through understanding. Understand that we are here to stay. Understand that we will protect what is ours. Understand that if you respect our families, our homes, our children, we will be the greatest allies you have ever known." She paused. "But understand this as well. We remember. We always remember. Every species that has ever tried to harm us, we remember. Every betrayal, every attack, every injustice. We forgive because forgiveness is part of who we are. But we never forget." The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted a permanent seat on the High Council. New laws were written protecting the rights of all species, especially their children. The Valorian leaders were convicted of crimes against sentient beings and sentenced to spend the rest of their very long lives on a prison planet, far from anyone they might harm. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The children who had been taken were reunited with their families. Many of them had nightmares, memories of machines trying to change who they were. But they were young and strong and surrounded by love. In time, most of them healed. Lieutenant Han Jian retired from the military to spend more time with her nephew. He was 9 years old now, a year older than when he had been taken. He still woke up screaming sometimes, but less often than before. "Auntie," he asked her one night, Why did they take us? Why did they want to change us? Han Jian held him close and thought about her answer. They were afraid, she finally said. They looked at us and saw something they did not understand. Something that scared them. So they tried to make us more like them. Did it work? She smiled and kissed his forehead. No, my darling. It did not work. Nothing could ever change who we are. We are human. And that is the most wonderful thing in the galaxy. Across the stars, species that had existed for hundreds of thousands of years began teaching their young a new lesson. There was a species called humans. They were young and strange, and sometimes frightening. But they were also brave and loyal and fierce in their love. Do not underestimate them. Do not threaten them. And above all, never touch their children, because humans remember, and humans never give up.